Before the world knew the name John Wayne, he was just Marion Morrison, a small-town boy from Glendale with a loyal dog named Duke. But Hollywood transformed him into an icon, the rugged cowboy, the fearless hero, the man who defined American grit. Yet away from the cameras, a storm of whispers followed him for decades, tales that no one dared confirm. Until now. After years of silence, the woman who worked by his side, his trusted secretary, is finally ready to speak. And what she reveals will forever change how you see the Duke. And what she's about to reveal may shatter the image you've held of the Duke for a lifetime. These aren't just idle whispers, this is the truth from the woman who stood at his side, saw the man behind the legend, and heard the stories the public was never meant to know. Before he became John Wayne, the face of American courage, the man was born Marion Robert Morrison on May 26, 1907, in the quiet town of Winterset, Iowa. No fame. No fortune. Just a boy with big dreams, far removed from the dust and danger of Hollywood's western sets. Marion was the firstborn of Clyde Leonard Morrison, a hard-working man who took whatever jobs he could, from pharmacy work to odd labor, and Mary Alberta Brown, a devoted homemaker who poured her energy into raising her children. Life in rural Iowa during the early 1900s was simple, but it carried its share of hardship. When Marion was just 7 years old, his parents packed up their modest life and headed west, chasing the promise of a better future. They couldn't have known that this move would set the stage for the making of an American icon, and a man whose private truths were far more complex than his on-screen heroics. They moved to Lancaster, California, and shortly thereafter, they relocated again, this time to Glendale, California. Settling in Glendale would turn out to be a significant milestone for Marion. One of the first things that distinguished Marion wasn't his future in film, but a dog named Duke. The name became popular, and Marion started to be called Duke more frequently than his original name. In fact, he liked it so much that he even requested his teachers at school to refer to him as Duke instead of Marion. At school, Duke was not only well-mannered but also intelligent and athletic. He attended Glendale High School, where he excelled in both academics and sports. He was a member of the football team and quickly gained a reputation as a strong and talented player. His skills on the field paid off when he received a football scholarship to the University of Southern California. This was a significant achievement, especially at a time when scholarships were scarce and college was often unattainable for many families. At USC, Duke became a member of the Sigma Chi fraternity and continued to excel on the football field. He played as an offensive tackle and took his studies seriously. Everything was going smoothly, and his future appeared bright. However, during his second year at the university, everything took a turn. He sustained a serious injury while body surfing, which prevented him from continuing his football career. Consequently, he lost his scholarship and could no longer afford to remain at USC. The setback was both painful and unforeseen, prompting Duke to reevaluate his future plans. And that's where the story becomes truly captivating, as Duke secures his first major role and embarks on his journey to becoming John Wayne. From background extra to legend. Marion Morrison found himself working behind the scenes in the film industry after being forced to leave college due to a football accident. He accepted a position at Fox Film Corporation as a prop boy. His chores were easy at beginning. Arranging scenes, shifting props, and lending a hand when required. Duke, however, wasn't only there to get paid. His attention was focused on everything around him. He saw how directors gave directions, how performers acted, and how movie sets were run. Soon after, Duke attracted the notice of one of Hollywood's most renowned directors, John Ford. Ford recognized a unique quality in the tall, industrious, and powerful young guy. He began assigning Duke little, uncredited additional parts in a number of movies. Although he didn't have much screen time in these early segments, they were nonetheless important. Ford turned to become Duke's mentor, offering guidance and gradually boosting his self-assurance in front of the camera. The decision by director Raoul Walsh to cast Duke in a major part in 1930 was the true turning point. Walsh sought someone who looked like a real frontiersman for his big Western movie, The Big Trail. He selected Duke to play the courageous and resolute wagon train scout Breck Coleman. Marion Morrison wasn't considered a marketable name for a movie star at the time. He chose a new one with the studio's assistance. They decided on John Wayne because it seemed powerful, straightforward, and very American. Wayne's career didn't start off well because of the huge trail's dismal box office results. Rather, he worked on low-budget movies, mostly westerns, during the most of the 1930s. He also portrayed a singing cowboy in a few of these movies, which was a common character type at the time. When John Ford put him in the movie Stagecoach in 1939, everything changed. With a solid script, a gifted cast, and significant studio support, this was a big-budget western. Wayne portrayed the Ringo Kid, an outlaw who embarks on a perilous stagecoach voyage into Apache territory with a bunch of strangers. Viewers paid attention as soon as Wayne stepped onto the screen, riding in from a distance, twirling his weapon, and looking straight into the camera. He became a star as a result of his impactful arrival. John Wayne's career took off after it. He started to play more serious parts and was frequently portrayed as the tough, unyielding hero, the type of guy who never spoke but always completed the task at hand. He created powerful, trustworthy, and fervently nationalistic characters. Particularly at a time when the nation was dealing with significant events like World War II, Hollywood, romance, and covert relationships, these roles resonated with viewers across the nation. John Wayne's most well-known roles were those of a valiant soldier or a gallant cowboy. His private life, however, was equally as dramatic off-camera as the films he featured in. Wayne had a gentler, more passionate side that came through in his relationships, despite his reputation as a strong guy. Throughout his lengthy career, he was the subject of numerous rumors and actual events, particularly concerning love, marriage, and the ladies in his life, even though he frequently kept his private life private. The relationship between John Wayne and Marlene Dietrich, a German-born actress renowned for her beauty and charm, was one of the most talked-about periods of his personal life. When Dietrich and Wayne first collaborated on the 1940 movie Seven Sinners, Dietrich was already a tremendous star. They clicked right away on screen. Dietrich portrayed a seductive lounge singer, while Wayne portrayed a naval officer. Audiences adored the energy and charm in their scenes together. It was more than simply acting, though. Off-screen, Wayne and Dietrich were also participating. The two started dating when Seven Sinners was being filmed, even though Wayne was already married at the time. One of Hollywood's worst-kept secrets was their affair. Although neither of them discussed it in public during their lifetimes, intimate friends and cast members frequently made insinuations that the relationship was genuine and intense. The two actors went on to collaborate on two more movies, The Spoilers and Pittsburgh, all of which came out in 1942. Fans couldn't help but remark how natural they were as loving partners, and their on-screen chemistry was once again impressive. Dietrich and Wayne maintained a close friendship throughout their lives, even after their personal relationship ended. Their brief romance turned into a memorable moment in Hollywood history, and they had a great deal of respect for one another. However, there were other women who were linked to John Wayne through romantic rumors besides Marlene Dietrich. Gail Russell was another name that was frequently associated with him. Angel and the Bad Man, his co-star from 1947. During this time, Wayne was still married, and while he and Russell denied having a romantic relationship, some around them had suspicions. Many others thought that something more was happening because of their tight connection, lengthy phone conversations, and time spent together. Whether it was a love relationship or just a close buddy, Wayne's support was consoling to Russell, who battled drinking and personal issues. It gave the rumors of his adultery more credence. Merle Oberon, a well-known actress who starred in hit movies in the 1930s and 1940s, was the subject of another reported affair. According to reports, they started dating in 1938 and remained together until 1947, which coincided with Wayne's second marriage. People close to Wayne said that he had real affection for Oberon and spent a lot of time with her when he was away from his family, however the whole truth was never verified. Wayne's 3 marriages each presented a tale of love, stress, and heartache, even if his escapades and romances garnered a lot of attention. Josephine Alicia Science, a Panamanian consul's daughter, was his first wife. Together, Michael, Mary, Patrick, and Melinda are their 4 children from their 1933 marriage. Although Josephine came from a well-respected family and was a devoted Catholic, their marriage was fraught with difficulties. Wayne spent a lot of time away from home due to his busy film schedule and rising fame. Their relationship was severely strained as a result of the cheating rumors. In 1945, the couple finally parted ways and got a divorce. Wayne remarried shortly after. Esperanza Bauer, a Mexican actress he met while traveling, became his second wife. They had a reputation for having a turbulent and contentious marriage. Esperanza was said to be quite envious, particularly when Wayne was collaborating with other female actors. Esperanza accused Wayne of having several affairs, and their arguments were frequently loud and in the open. After only a few years of marriage, they got divorced in 1954. According to a number of Wayne's acquaintances, this relationship was the most trying period of his life. Wayne married Perolete, a Peruvian actress he met in the early 1950s, for the third and last time. Shortly after his divorce from Esperanza, they were married in 1954. Marissa, Isa, and Ethan were their 3 children together. Their marriage first appeared to be more secure than his prior ones. Wayne's profession was encouraged by Parr, who even took a break from acting to spend more time with their family. However, their relationship deteriorated as Wayne grew older and kept up his long work hours. The pair split up around the early 1970s. Until Wayne's passing in 1979, they were legally married even though they never had a divorce. However, he was spending his latter years with Pat Stacey, his former secretary. John Wayne always made an effort to portray himself as a devoted family guy, even in the face of his troubled marriages and persistent suspicions. The majority of his children were still in close contact with him, and he frequently talked glowingly of them in interviews. Nevertheless, he carried the emotional burden of his personal life with him throughout his professional life. The next chapter of Wayne's journey would thrust him into the center of a national crisis, despite his best efforts to keep his personal life private. And it all began when the United States entered a war. He didn't fight in that war. Millions of American men were recruited or joined in the military when World War II broke out and the U.S. entered the conflict following the 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor. At the age of 34, John Wayne was younger than the typical new recruit but yet fit to serve. He was also physically active and in good condition, which led many to question why, unlike many of his fellow performers, including close friend Jimmy Stewart, he didn't don a uniform and go to war. Some others were disappointed because, in reality, John Wayne never joined the military during World War II. On cinema, he was frequently portrayed as the perfect American man, a bold cowboy, a resolute soldier, and someone who never wavered in his commitment to morality. So why didn't he actually go to war? There were multiple causes, and he had limited influence over them. Wayne was first given a deferment from the draft because of his family obligations. He was able to postpone military service since he and his first wife, Josephine Alicia Sens, had 4 children at the time. However, the corporation that had Wayne under contract, Republic Studios, also put pressure on him. Wayne was their most well-known figure and a significant revenue generator. The studio would lose its most precious asset if he went to fight in the war. To keep him out of the draft, Republic Studios put a lot of effort into it. According to reports, the studio reached out to the government to request an extension of his postponement. Additionally, they threatened to take legal action against Wayne if he attempted to violate his enlistment contract. This put him in a challenging situation. Wayne wanted to help and had a strong sense of patriotism, but his personal and professional commitments made it all but impossible. Wayne did not do nothing in spite of these obstacles. He corresponded with his mentor and close friend, director John Ford, who was employed in a military film unit after enlisting in the Navy. Wayne pleaded with Ford to assist him in locating a position in the war effort. Additionally, he applied to the Office of Strategic Services, a covert government organization that would eventually become the CIA. During the war, the OSS conducted spying and clandestine operations. Wayne felt he could fulfill this role without going against the terms of his Republic Studios contract. Regretfully, his application to the OSS was never accepted. Although the reason is unknown, many people think that Wayne's Hollywood persona didn't fit the AY's requirements or that the studio might have meddled. In any case, he felt helpless and grew more and more irritated. He started to feel a lot of remorse about not serving as the conflict dragged on. In 1943, Wayne offered to go on a Pacific tour with the United Service Organizations, USO, in an attempt to do what he could. During his roughly 3 months of journey, he met with American troops, visited medical facilities, and raised morale at several military stations, particularly in the South Pacific. He gave talks, posed for photos, and signed signatures. Meeting John Wayne face-to-face has great significance for numerous soldiers. He was a representation of power and courage, and his presence made them feel better. He was still upset about the fact that he did not serve in war. When questioned about it in following years, Wayne frequently switched the topic or provided evasive responses. The personal ideal he had established for himself was not met by his conduct throughout the war. And that sensation never really left. However, Wayne's career was about to take off just as the war was coming to an end and his personal struggles appeared to be abating. And he had more headlines to come. The Duke's Other Side. The world recognized John Wayne as the epitome of toughness. He was a representation of strength and resolve because of his loud voice, enormous stature, and composed, certain demeanor. However, fans hardly ever saw Wayne's other side behind the scenes. In contrast to his television presence, he was more human due to his private habits, modest pastimes, and even a few fears. The fact that John Wayne started losing his hair in the 1940s is one of the less well-known facts about him. Wayne became aware of the thinning of his hair, particularly on top, as he approached his late 30s. This wasn't out of the ordinary, but for a man who portrayed strong, bold characters, it was something he didn't want to display to the world. He began wearing a wig to preserve his on-screen persona. For the remainder of his life, this was a consistent aspect of his on- and off-screen persona. The majority of supporters were unaware. The wigs were custom-made to precisely match his hair color and style. On rare occasions, though, people did see him without it. The funeral of fellow actor Gary Cooper was one of the most talked-about events. Wayne, who was devastated by his friend's passing, didn't wear his wig to the service. Some fans were shocked to see a different side of the Duke, one that was genuine, vulnerable, and natural, when Life magazine filmed the occasion. John Wayne, however, was more than a movie star preoccupied with looks. He also liked to read and engage in other personal hobbies and quiet time. The fact that Wayne loved to read, especially classic literature, shocked a lot of people. He was a huge fan of Agatha Christie, Arthur Conan Doyle, and Charles Dickens. He didn't just periodically glance over these books. He discussed them with friends and read them on a regular basis. He was a talented radio performer as well. Radio shows were a significant source of entertainment in the heyday of radio, before television became popularity. Wayne frequently appeared on well-known shows like The Luella Parsons Show and The Hedda Hopper Show. Actors would discuss their most recent ventures and personal lives on these celebrity interview series. These interviews came naturally to Wayne. Laid back, humorous, and captivating. Wayne did more than just conduct interviews, though. He also adapted dramatic sequences from his films for listeners at home by performing them on the radio. He was ideal for radio theater because of his strong voice and delivery. Fans, particularly those who did not have easy access to movie theaters at the time, were given a new method to enjoy his work. In fact, in the 1950s, Wayne was offered the opportunity to host his own radio show. The purpose of the presentation, 3 Sheets to the Wind, was to aid in the beginning of a movie. Wayne portrayed a character in a number of action-packed, suspenseful escapades throughout the series. It was intended to serve as a radio drama and a promotional tool for his on-screen personas. Unfortunately, things didn't go as anticipated with the project. The radio series was short-lived, and the film was never produced. The fact that Three Sheets to the Wind has no known surviving recordings is even more regrettable. This is a significant loss for Wayne and fans of vintage radio. It would have provided a unique look at a different aspect of him. His timing, his voice, and his capacity to maintain an audience's interest in the absence of any images. Deterioration and the last years. John Wayne was one of the most well-known and esteemed movie stars in the world by the 1960s. He had gained a reputation as the tough, unafraid American hero, starred in numerous movies, and earned an Academy Award for True Grit. Behind the scenes, however, his health was beginning to deteriorate. Stress, physical strain from action-packed jobs, and years of heavy smoking were starting to catch up with him. Wayne received heartbreaking news in 1964. Lung cancer, a condition closely associated with smoking, was the diagnosis made for him. He had been a chronic smoker for decades at that point, frequently consuming 5 or more packs of cigarettes every day. His followers were surprised by the diagnosis, and those who knew him were concerned. Additionally, it occurred during a period when discussing cancer in public was still uncommon and even frowned upon. Wayne had extensive surgery to try to halt the illness. In a challenging and agonizing procedure, doctors removed his entire left lung along with 4 ribs. He took a long time to become well. He lost the physical stamina he had previously had, and breathing got harder. However, Wayne continued to work despite it. He returned to the screen within a year, despite the risks, doing physically demanding roles. Wayne's decision to disclose his diagnosis and surgery to the world was even more astounding. He encouraged people to get checked for cancer early through public speeches and interviews. Wayne's transparency was viewed as courageous and sincere during a period when many celebrities concealed their health conditions. By being honest about his experience, he even contributed to lessening the stigma associated with cancer. He consequently encouraged a lot of others to treat their personal health seriously. Wayne appeared to outperform the odds for a spell. Throughout the 1970s, he kept producing films, but at a slower rate. In The Shootist, his last movie, he portrayed an elderly gunfighter who was terminally ill with cancer. The position was emotionally impactful and very personal. Despite the fact that the character's story was made up, many viewers found significant similarities to Wayne's actual life. The Shooter turned into a silent send-off. Despite the fact that neither the public nor Wayne realized at the time that it would be his final movie. Wayne then received a second cancer diagnosis in 1979, only a few years after he had survived lung cancer. This diagnosis was even more dire, this time in his gut. By the time the cancer was discovered, it had spread, and surgery was no longer a viable choice. Wayne consented to test an experimental cancer vaccine that was being researched at the time because he was desperate to combat the illness. He was prepared to attempt anything that could buy him more time, even though it seemed unlikely. Wayne's health worsened in spite of the treatment. He lost weight, grew feeble, and was unable to work or travel. He was largely confined to his Los Angeles home in his last months. His lifelong friend and former secretary, Pat Stacey, provided him with care and consolation during this trying period. Through the pain, the drugs, and the gradual deterioration that accompanied the sickness, Stacey was there for him. She later wrote about this time in her love tale novel Duke, which provides a very intimate look into Wayne's last days. Stacey says Wayne fought his last battle with courage and strength. He seldom ever complained and hardly ever discussed his worry. Rather, he concentrated on his friends, family, children, grandchildren, and Stacey herself. Despite his physical frailty, he occasionally displayed warmth, humor, and intellect. Even when his body was no longer able to keep up, he remained the Duke in spirit. On June 11, 1979, John Wayne passed away at UCLA Medical Center in Los Angeles. He was 72. His passing garnered international attention. Supporters lamented the passing of a guy they had looked up to for many years. Actors, filmmakers, politicians, and regular people who had been impacted by his works and public strength began to pay their respects in droves. His friends and family carried on his legacy in a number of ways after his passing. The John Wayne Cancer Foundation was established by his children to promote cancer awareness, education, and research. Wayne's personal experience served as motivation for the movement to improve alternatives for diagnosis and treatment. His choice to be transparent about his disease gave others the courage and hope to face their own diagnosis. In the months following his death, Pat Stacey kept silent. In 1983, she finally released her book, which included many of the intimate and sentimental moments she spent with him in his last years. Her story gave many admirers the closest glimpse they had ever had of John Wayne as a real person who existed outside of the picture and the screen. Pat Stacey's terrifying disclosure. One of the most significant individuals in John Wayne's life during his last years was a woman by the name of Pat Stacey. She was his romantic girlfriend in addition to being his secretary. She witnessed Wayne in his final moments, when he was a man confronting his innermost anxieties and physical deterioration rather than the imposing movie star that audiences had seen on screen. Pat Stacey held off on sharing her story for a few years after Wayne's passing. She wrote a love story called Duke, which was released in 1983. Fans got a close-up look at John Wayne's latter years thanks to the book. It was complete of private recollections, emotional moments, and personal conversations. However, what stood out maximum turned into a chilling declare that stuck everyone's interest. Stacey believed that John Wayne's most cancers became not random. She idea it become because of radiation exposure from a film he filmed almost 25 years in advance. The film inquiry changed into The Conqueror, an ancient epic in which Wayne played the function of Genghis Khan. The film changed into produced by using Howard Hughes and directed by means of Dick Powell. At the time, the place for the movie appeared perfect for a desolate tract placing. The Forged and team traveled to St. George, Utah near the border with Nevada to shoot most of the outside scenes. What they failed to understand or weren't told changed into that the filming website become positioned downwind from a U.S. government nuclear take a look at website in Nevada. In the years just earlier than filming, the government had performed numerous atomic bomb checks within the place. The radioactive dust from those explosions had been carried by means of the wind, and it settled over huge elements of Utah, inclusive of where the Conqueror turned into shot. Despite warnings from scientists and some neighborhood citizens, American authorities publicly downplayed the risks of the fallout. Officials claimed that the radiation tiers within the place were low and that there has been no extreme danger. Based in this facts, or lack of it, the manufacturing crew went in advance with filming. The Solid and team spent numerous weeks within the radioactive wasteland, filming scenes inside the warm sun, surrounded by way of dirt and sand. To make matters worse, big amounts of dirt from the set were later shipped back to Hollywood to film extra scenes in a studio. That means even more capacity exposure. On the time, no person regarded overly involved. However, years later, the outcomes have become painfully clean. Consistent with reviews and interviews over the years, 91 out of the 220 folks that labored on The Conqueror, including actors, team, and other personnel, developed cancer. A lot of them, like Wayne, sooner or later died from the disease. Other 9AF3F374C588C9DCDD1F10256FA5 actors from the film, which include Susan Hayward and Agnes Moorehead, also lost their lives to cancer. Even the film's director, Dick Powell, died of most cancers. Pat Stacey believed strongly that the filming vicinity had something to do with Wayne's infection. Even as Wayne had already survived lung cancer inside the 60s, he was recognized with stomach most cancers in 1979, a one-of-a-kind and even more competitive form. Stacey said that Wayne regularly spoke to her about his fears. He wondered if that film inside the Utah wasteland had sealed his destiny. In step with her, he felt haunted by using the idea that something invisible and lethal had accompanied him for many years. Even after Stacey released her ebook, many in the media were hesitant to cover the whole tale. Even as some reporters pronounced on the relationship among the Conqueror and the excessive number of most cancers instances, the subject by no means received the whole attention it likely deserved. Pat Stacey's voice became one of the few talking overtly about what she believed had happened. For fans of John Wayne, the concept that he might also have died due to a government testing software became deeply upsetting. Wayne were the image of American power and freedom for many years. Yet, it now appeared viable that he had unknowingly been exposed to something that would kill him years later. Stacy's book did not simply talk approximately their courting. It had become an effective caution about how the reality can every now and then live hidden for too lengthy. If you loved this video, recollect to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you in no way miss greater testimonies from behind the scenes of Hollywood history.